Edit update 2. I didn't end up letting him pay the vet bill. She's good and healthy. Around $200,000 for tests, etc. Because I didn't want him to feel like he was able to rectify the situation in any way. I sent him a text with my anger and told him to lose my number and blocked him. Good riddance. Super sad about the whole thing. Never doing that again. Cheers, y'all, and thanks again for all your advice and words. Edit update. I cannot thank everyone enough. An update if you're interested. I have played nice for now so that he'll pay for the vet bill. Her appointment is tomorrow morning and he's agreed to pay. And once I get the money, you bet your butt I'm going nuclear. I've decided to do it through a text because I don't ever want to see his face again. And then I'll be blocking him. Thank you so much for your words. I really was having a hard time because I was taking into account the years of friendship. But you've helped me realize that doesn't matter and he isn't who I thought he was, and me. But mostly my dog deserved better. Thanks everyone, thank Frick for Reddit. Me, female 27. Him, male 27. Dog, female 6. We have been friends for around 2 years. I asked him if he could watch my dog over the weekend, but told him, no worries if not, and if he wasn't 100% about it, because I could board her instead. Boarding place is closed Sundays, so I'd have to board her an extra day. So him doing it was more ideal. I also confided in him that this was the first time I'd be leaving her in the care of a friend like this. We hung out Thursday night and told him the responsibilities, and confirmed all was still good. He was enthusiastic and excited. I left Friday at around 1 p.m. and texted him that I left and where I left my key for him, and thanked him again for doing this. On Saturday around 11 a.m., I texted him to check in to see how last night went and this morning, and if my instructions I left made sense. And if he had any questions, I left a little note of things. Like, could you leave her on the porch in between your visits? So she's not in her kennel all day. And when you take her out to go to the bathroom, if you could take her on the 30-foot leash so that she can get zoomies out and run around a bit. He responded with a voice note saying no stress, all good, and said he didn't see my note, but he would have to double back. Should have been an alarm because I left it on top of her kennel, and you'd have to move it to get her leash. At around 3, he sent me a picture of her, and around 3:40, he said that he couldn't find her bed and was going to put her back in her cage. I don't know what the bed had to do with putting her on my porch, but I didn't think twice about this because in my mind he had been there in the morning and again in the afternoon and is going again at night. So he came an extra time than I had requested, and I was just super thrilled that she was in good hands. So I replied telling him that he's the best and that I really appreciate him doing this and thanking him for the photo because I miss her. He said, "You're welcome." Anytime, and I carried on with my weekend. Fast forward to me coming home and meeting up with him to get the key hours of catching up and goofing off, and he showed me cute videos he took of her and told me how she danced a little for him. Cute anecdotes from the weekend. I was so happy, so thankful, and made sure he knew it. And I told him I wanted to take him out to dinner and drinks to thank him. As he was leaving, he said that he needed to tell me something that he couldn't live with himself if he didn't. I was like, I'm scared. He said that he didn't get to my dog until after he got off work on Saturday, not until 3 p.m. So he neglected her in her kennel at my house for 24 plus hours. No food, no water, no movement, drowning in her own piss and shoot. And he lied to me when I checked in Saturday at around 11. He, in fact, had not seen her and told me otherwise. No stress my butt. Also, so wild that when I said he was the best, he had the audacity to not only say, "You're welcome, but anytime." You're welcome. I am the best and deserve that thanks and appreciation, and to neglect your dog for you anytime. When he did finally get to her at 3 p.m., he didn't even use the 30-foot leash, like I had asked him to, so that she could get some energy out and movement and some exercise. He used my 5'1", and then at this point, I feel like the least he could have done was put her on the porch like I'd asked, and also for her own sake and sanity so that she didn't have to go back into the kennel that she was just trapped in for 24 plus hours. But that did not happen. He put her back into her kennel. Reason because can't find her bed, which is literally in front of the sliding glass door that goes to the porch. Regardless of not being able to find her bed though, What did that have to do with anything? I am so upset. And his reasoning for why this all happened is the cherry on top. He said that he knew he had to take care of her, but he got high, and then just decided to get more and more high. I know, y'all, I know. I live 3 miles away from him, less than 0.5 miles. He could have walked. He could have Ubered. Frick, I would have even paid for the Uber. He could have asked a friend. He could have also told me. I would have been able to get from where I was, 3 HRS from my house, to save her before he even decided to show up, or been able to ask other friends. Also has no sense that he used this as an excuse, because he drives everywhere high and does everything high. He is always high. So what is different about this high? I do not want to condone driving and being high, so if that is his excuse, fine, it just doesn't align with the rest of his life and choices. But instead, he did absolutely nothing to address the situation and just got more high. Okay, fine, you got super high and didn't get to her Friday. Fine. But why the frick did you not get to her Saturday morning before you left for work? Like I said, I live 0.5 miles away from him. Not a huge time commitment away from him. But regardless of that, and even if I lived 30 minutes away, he still was responsible for the well-being of my dog while I was gone. That's what he agreed to and accepted accountability for. But I guess frick me and frick my dog. If he has any animosity towards me, cheers. But why would you ever do this to a sweet little dog who has never done anything to you? So cruel. So awful. I am so upset and do not know how I could possibly move forward from this. How could I ever trust him again? I feel like I have no idea who he is anymore, and the person I thought he was is completely shattered. I am ill thinking about it. 8 hours is the max I ever leave her in there, and to think that time was not only doubled, but tripled. So sad. Pretty sure she has a UTI, and I want to take her to the vet so they can make sure she's okay. And for potential UTI, I think he should pay for it, but not sure how to go about that. I haven't talked to him yet about this. After he told me that news, I started to cry, and he said that he should probably go and left, which is also amazing. I haven't heard from him since. This was Sunday morning, afternoon, and right now it's Tuesday morning. I am worried about talking to him about this face to face, because if he is willing to do that to an innocent dog. And at this point, I truly don't know what he would or would not do. I also don't know how I could see his face without punching him. But I also want to tell him how I'm feeling face to face, so that he can see how angry I am and feel my wrath. I also think telling him face to face, I'm more likely to get answers. Like, why didn't you go on Saturday morning? And why did the bed matter for her to be on the porch? I need advice. Am I overreacting? I am not sure that I can continue being friends with him, which makes me so sad because he's been my best friend and someone I truly loved and enjoyed spending time with. But this is a huge betrayal. Would you try to get over this and still be friends? Do you think I should ask for time and revisit it later? How should I ask about the vet bill? One of my friends thinks that I should pursue charges. I live in CO with pretty serious animal cruelty laws. Is that something I should threaten if he doesn't pay the vet bill? I definitely wouldn't be able to be friends doing that, though. That definitely cuts it off for good. Do you think it depends on how he handles this? If he's begging for forgiveness and how to fix it versus not talking to me. What he's doing now. His initial apology when he told me what he did was very profound, which I can't decide is better. Or not that he was aware of the weight of what he did. He acknowledged that my dog is my family and that I've been nothing short of a quality friend to him, and both of us didn't deserve this. This has really got me spiraling, and I am really unwell. I would love anything and everything you have to say. All of the thoughts are welcome. Please help me navigate this. Thanks, everyone. Edit. Want to add that I watch his cat every time he goes out of town, around 8-ish times now. For a few comments before the update. Comment 1. If my supposed best friend treated my dog in a neglectful way, lied about it, and betrayed my trust like that, I'd frankly never speak to them ever again. The chances that you'll get money out of this person for a vet bill are, I think, nil. If he needed help, you were only a phone call away, and he couldn't even be bothered to do that. Personally, I would send them a message saying that they'd broken my trust, neglected my dog, and lied to me. If it does indeed turn out that your dog has a UTI, and it can be linked to his neglect of her, then I'd tack that onto the end of the message and state that apparently you can indeed put a price on friendship, and that's his. Comment 2. I don't even have a dog in this season of my life, and I would tell you to cut this person out of your life. He showed you everything you need. Take some time to mourn the friendship that you thought you had while hugging your sweet pup, and allow yourself to move on. You were violated. You are not overreacting, and it's understandable to spiral. You trusted someone to enter your home and take care of your most loved being, and he totally neglected not just what matters to you, but the life and care of a living thing. I hate this for you. Please remove them from your life. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So, after I blocked him, I thought that was the end of it, but life had other plans. My dog started acting weird, not eating, not playing, just not herself. I took her to the vet, and they found something in her stomach. Turns out, she had swallowed something she shouldn't have during the time she was neglected. Surgery was the only option, and it cost a fortune. I was furious, and I couldn't believe he was still causing me problems even after I cut him off. I didn't tell him about the surgery. I didn't want his money or his apologies, but he found out anyway. He showed up at my place, unannounced and uninvited, with a check in hand. He'd heard from a mutual friend and wanted to make things right. I didn't want to accept it, but I was drowning in vet bills and I needed that money. So I took it, but I made it clear that this was it. We were done. No more friendship, no more anything. I thought I could breathe a sigh of relief after that. But then his mom called me. She was crying, saying he'd been in an accident. He was in the hospital and it was bad. She said he'd been on his way to my place to apologize again when it happened. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, guilt, sadness. It was all a mess inside me. I didn't go to see him, though. I couldn't. Days passed, and I heard he was getting better. But then, the other shoe dropped. His sister reached out to me, saying he was being charged with animal cruelty. Someone had reported him, and with my dog's medical records, it was enough to get the authorities involved. I was torn. Part of me felt like he deserved it, but another part of me remembered the friend he used to be. And now here I am, trying to move on with my life. My dog is recovering slowly but surely. I'm trying to forgive him, not for his sake, but for mine. I need to let go of this anger. But it's hard. Every time I look at my dog, I remember what he did, and it feels like a betrayal all over again. Thanks for reading. My in-laws criticized my parenting and made me feel worthless after a tough birth. So I accepted their money and watched them grovel for forgiveness. Background: I delivered my first baby 6 weeks ago. I had to be induced early at 36 weeks due to sudden and severe preeclampsia. I ended up requiring a C-section after no progress for 36 hours with the induction. The baby was admitted to the NICU right away due to difficulty breathing, and I wasn't even able to touch him before he was whisked away. My hospital stay was complicated by postpartum preeclampsia, which required me to stay even longer. Overall, I was in the hospital for 1 week, and by the time I left, I felt extremely traumatized, exhausted, and in pain from the surgery. While I was being induced, my parents traveled from out of state to be there for their first grandchild. This was something that was planned and discussed well before delivery. Also, as discussed, they stayed with us for a couple of weeks to help, and they were a huge help, especially my mom. She helped with cleaning and caring for the baby overnight, so we could rest. My husband's father, Larry, in his 60s, and his father's girlfriend, Tina, in her 60s, also understandably wanted to come stay and meet the baby. They decided to come visit from out of state when we were 3 weeks postpartum. The week before their arrival, they decided to come a day early, which I said no to, as my parents would be leaving that day, and I needed a day to clean between house guests. They weren't happy about this, but I stood my ground as I wasn't even asked if it was okay for them to come that week anyway. The day before Larry and Tina arrived, I started having symptoms from preeclampsia again. High blood pressure, severe headache that wouldn't go away, overall not feeling well. To be honest, this really triggered me, and I was terrified of being hospitalized again and/or dying. I didn't want this to affect their visit, but honestly, I was not in the best place mentally or physically. When they arrived the following day, they immediately started criticizing our parenting. "Oh, you're always holding that baby. You need to keep him awake all day so he will sleep at night. You're feeding him too much," etc. Also, while Larry was holding the baby, he pulled out a large knife and used it to cut plastic off a gift, which honestly scared me a little. Between the constant remarks, the stress of my mom being gone, and us having to care for the baby through the night, feeling extremely unwell and also still recovering from major surgery, I was in a bad mood, and I'm sure they could tell even though I tried to hide it. Larry and Tina decided I needed to get out of the house and away from the baby, and asked if I wanted to go walk around a nearby tourist town while my husband watched the baby. I said no, as I was exhausted and wasn't feeling well due to the preeclampsia. I could barely walk from the bedroom to the kitchen, much less an entire town. Also, I just really didn't want to go with them. But they kept insisting and making remarks about lowering stress to help my blood pressure. The next part is what I'm really bothered about. Larry said to me, "You're reminding me of my mother, and it's really not in a good way." His mother had an accident later in life, which led to agoraphobia, anxiety issues, and a Xanax addiction. I can't remember what I said back, but I think it was okay. We did end up all going for a drive around the area due to their insistence. We all went, including the baby, and it was fine. Except Larry continued to make remarks about my mood. He said something like, "Oh, there's a bench you could go sit on and calm you down. That might help your blood pressure." I then calmly explained to him that the best thing for me right now is medication. At one point, Larry also made a comment about how my parents got to stay with us for weeks, but I wouldn't let them come a day early. I told him they could stay as long as they wanted, but they left after 3 days. It's now been a few weeks since they stayed with us, and I honestly can't get over how they acted. I felt so disrespected and still do. I've tried talking to my husband about it, but he's very dismissive of it all and says they were just trying to help me. But in my mind, they actually just insulted me when I didn't do what they wanted. I've also heard Larry say to my husband over the phone, "Oh, did you finally get that girl out of the house?" Like we have been out of the house since the baby was born. We have gone on walks, shopping, to the doctor. I don't understand what they expect of me. Am I wrong here? How do I move on from this? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your husband massively failed you here. You've just gone through an absolute ordeal, medically, physically, and mentally. And he thinks a pair of boomers harping on you is trying to help? Would he like it if someone came in and criticized him every 5 minutes at his job? Not that parenting the baby is your job. It's his too, but trying to find an example that might resonate with him. Imagine your mom came and followed him around the house after major surgery and harped on him about how he cleaned and held the baby. Would he be as dismissive then? He is supposed to protect you. He failed. Does he at least pull his weight with the baby and housework? Or is he bad at that too? Comment 2. How do you move on from this? In the short term, you tell your husband that he needs to get educated on your health plan. He needs to believe you when you talk about your health needs, and he needs to believe you and support you and your baby's needs. Above the comments of his parents, no more visits from the in-laws for a while. In the long term, it might be worth it for you to talk to your doctor again very soon and get another checkup. If you have any blood pressure issues right now, that needs to be seen to. Also, maybe consider counseling for yourself and your husband, as this partnership needs some practice in communication and respecting each other's needs first, before others. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around for an update. Just when I thought things might settle down, life threw another curveball. My health took a nosedive again, and I found myself back in the hospital with complications from the preeclampsia. It was like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. My husband had to juggle work, the baby, and hospital visits. The stress was etched on his face, but he never complained. During this time, Larry and Tina's comments kept replaying in my head. It was like a broken record, adding to the anxiety that was already there. I felt cornered, like I had to defend my parenting and my health choices to people who weren't living my reality. Meanwhile, my husband, bless him, was trying to keep the peace. He'd call Larry and Tina, updating them on my condition, and they'd send their best wishes. But it felt hollow. I knew they were talking behind our backs, questioning our decisions, and it stung. The day I was discharged, my husband sat me down for a talk. He said Larry had offered to lend us money to hire a full-time nurse for a while, so I could focus on recovering without the stress of the baby. I was torn. The offer was generous, but it felt like a slap in the face, like they didn't trust us to care for our own child. Plus, accepting the money would mean they'd feel entitled to have a say in our lives, and I wasn't sure I could handle that. But then, the baby got sick. It was nothing serious, just a common cold, but it hit me hard. I was already struggling with my health, and now the fear of the baby's well-being consumed me. I was barely sleeping, constantly checking on him, and my blood pressure was all over the place. One night, after a particularly rough day, my husband found me crying in the nursery. I was at my breaking point. He hugged me, and we had a heart-to-heart. He confessed that he was overwhelmed too, and that maybe Larry's offer wasn't such a bad idea. It was a hard pill to swallow, but I knew he was right. We needed help. So, we took the money. It felt like admitting defeat, but the relief was immediate. The nurse was a godsend. She took over the night shifts, and I could finally sleep. She showed us tips and tricks for soothing the baby, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The baby's health improved quickly, and so did mine. I started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But the real test came when Larry and Tina announced they were coming back for a visit. I was apprehensive, but I had to face them sooner or later. Their visit was surprisingly pleasant. They were impressed with the nurse and even apologized for their earlier comments. I was shocked. It seemed like the money had changed their attitude, or maybe they finally saw how much we were struggling. In the end, the nurse stayed with us for a month, and it made all the difference. My husband and I got back on our feet, and we learned how to balance our new life with the baby. Larry and Tina's visit ended on a good note, and there was a new understanding between us. Looking back, I realized that sometimes help comes in unexpected ways, and pride can be a tricky thing. I'm just grateful that we made it through those tough weeks, and our little family is stronger for it. Thanks for reading. My husband hates my dad and tries to use a secret recording against him. So I expose his lies and file for divorce. My husband, 33-year-old male, and I, 32-year-old female, live in California and have been together for 15 years. My husband hates my dad, 60-year-old male, and it's gotten to the point that I'm considering divorce over it. My husband refuses to attend therapy with me, as he says that it's just 45 minutes of me and the therapist ganging up on him. Not only does he hate my father, but he continuously berates me over it every time a family function pops up, and we have to see my parents. We live in the same general area as both of our families, so family functions on both sides are regular occurrences. I attend most of my husband's family functions without issue. Early on in our relationship, high school basically, my dad didn't approve of my husband. At one point, my dad even called Verizon behind my back to block his number so he couldn't call me. I was 17 at the time. To be fair, my husband was a bit of a live wire in high school and made me cry a lot. Emotional abuse, distrust, and our relationship was tumultuous, which I always chalked up to just being young. We now have a good relationship with lots of love, friendship, and trust, besides this one ongoing intense issue. My husband has always struggled with self-confidence and emotional regulation. He was short growing up and was bullied a lot, and has a typical baby boomer dad who discouraged emotion. My dad is confident and can be loud/domineering. Oftentimes my husband will hurl, "You're just like your father" at me in a very contemptuous way, which hurts because I love my dad. And to be honest, I'm proud to be like him in many ways. I feel I've absorbed the good parts of my dad's personality and left out the bad parts. My dad has his faults. He can absolutely be a jerk sometimes. but so can anyone. 2 years ago, my husband and I chose to abort a pregnancy, and my dad didn't handle it the best. I'll be the first to admit. However, I've forgiven my dad and have moved on myself. But these issues my husband has about my dad predate the baby unaliving by many years. My husband openly tells me, "I don't hate your whole family, just one person." He openly makes fun of my father to my face. He makes no effort to be any other way besides openly hateful, contemptuous, and angry about my dad, despite me begging him to stop bad-mouthing my father to me, as it makes me sad. My dad has no idea of any of this, as my husband hides it well when we do see my family. If I choose to go see my dad, my husband tells me I'm choosing my dad over him. When the topic of separation comes up, my husband says, "Your dad will be thrilled if you finally leave me." All of this makes me so brokenhearted. I'm also currently dealing with a chronic illness. I'll be getting surgery this summer, so all of this stress about my husband hating my dad and wanting to make sure I never forget that is making my recent diagnosis extra difficult. TLT at this point, I'm so exhausted from constantly arguing with my husband about my father that as of yesterday, we are living separately. I love my dad, and overall he raised me well. And I love my husband and want to make this work, but despite several attempts to resolve this issue, nothing has worked. We have huge fights about my dad, at least once a month. Husband badmouths my dad to my face constantly. Jokes, name-calling, telling me how much he hates him. Husband refuses to go to therapy with me. He is so singularly obsessed with his hatred of my father that it's ruining our marriage. During arguments about my dad, my husband will often say, "I know how I'm behaving is wrong, I just can't stop. How would you handle? Please help." Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your husband never stopped harassing you. He is refusing to change. You cannot control him, only yourself. You've made the right decision to separate, and I hope that you follow through in divorce. Please continue going to counseling. I hope that you lean on your family's support through your surgery. Please allow people who are actually capable of caring about your health and well-being. Your husband does not or cannot to help you recover. You're very strong that your husband has not successfully broken you down this whole time, even though he's been trying to since you were a teenager. You've done all you can for him and he spits in your face and can't accept it. But it's time to prioritize your health, safety, and well-being now. Comment 2. A dysfunctional family dynamic is a valid reason to separate, but it kind of feels like you are leaving out a chunk of the picture. Is your husband really just that resentful for something that happened 15 years ago? There has to be more to it than that. I have been in a relationship where my Phil was an obnoxious butt who would constantly throw snark and insults at me, while my ex would just let him and expect me to put on my best behavior and just accept it. And it finally culminated in me breaking up because I simply couldn't be in a relationship where my girlfriend just accepted her father's abuse towards me. So my instinct tells me there is a perspective in this whole story that is not being covered. Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments and advice on my last post. Things have escalated since then, and I'm not sure where to begin. Just 3 days ago, my husband did something that I never thought he would. He went behind my back and contacted my dad. I found out because my dad called me, confused and upset. My husband had told him everything, how much he despised him, the things he said about him to me, and even brought up the past with the pregnancy. My dad was shocked. He had no idea the extent of my husband's feelings. I was furious with my husband for involving my dad, especially since I've been trying to keep the peace. But what really got to me was that my husband had recorded the conversation, hoping my dad would say something he could use against him. Instead, my dad was calm, even apologetic, acknowledging that he hadn't always been the best father to me. He admitted to his faults and said he just wanted us to be happy. Hearing that recording changed something in me. I saw a side of my dad I hadn't seen before, vulnerable and sincere. And I saw a side of my husband that scared me. He was willing to go to such lengths to hurt me and my dad, just to prove a point. The next day, my husband came home to talk. He said he felt terrible about what he had done and that it was a wake-up call for him. He promised to try harder, to work on his issues with my dad, and even agreed to go to therapy. I wanted to believe him, but something felt off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the recording, my husband's promise, and my dad's reaction. I decided to do something I never thought I would. I went through my husband's phone, and there it was, a text from his best friend saying, "Did she buy it? You're a genius, man." I felt sick. My husband hadn't changed. He was manipulating me, playing the remorseful husband while bragging to his friend about deceiving me. It was all a game to him. The following day, I confronted him. He tried to deny it at first, but I had the proof. He finally broke down and admitted that he had planned the whole thing, thinking it would make me choose him over my dad once and for all. He said he felt threatened by my relationship with my dad and that he didn't know how else to handle it. I didn't know what to say. I was heartbroken, angry, and felt betrayed. I told him I needed time to think and that I couldn't be with him right now. He left, and I've been alone since, trying to process everything. It's been interesting to say the least of emotions. I'm still dealing with my illness and now this. I've been leaning on my friends for support, and they've been great, but I feel like I'm at a crossroads with my marriage. I love my husband, but I don't know if I can ever trust him again. For now, I'm focusing on my health and trying to find some peace amidst all this chaos. I'm not sure what the future holds for my marriage, but I know I need to be strong for whatever comes next. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.